All right, let's dive into something. I bet you use it every day, but you haven't thought much about it.
Okay.
Visa,
Yeah.
that little
Yeah.
blue, white, and gold flag on your credit card.
Right.
You swipe it, you tap it, maybe you even forget it's there.
Yeah.
But the story behind Visa is anything but boring.
Yeah, I agree.
It's about taking risks, dodging disasters,
Uh-huh.
and this one guy, Dee Hock,
Yeah.
who pretty much reinvented how money moves around the world.
It is fascinating how we take this system for granted. You're absolutely right. A couple of taps on your phone, boom, money's moved. Seamless, secure, instant. But to get to this point, wild ride.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay.
We've got articles, research, even a podcast episode all about Visa.
Nice.
We're going to trace its journey from, get this, a total mess in Fresno, California,
Fresno.
to this financial giant processing something like 1,700 transactions per second.
Per second. Wow. And this isn't just about history, right? By understanding how Visa got here, we get this glimpse into the future of payments, the role of technology, even how powerful organizations can be structured. It's a window into the evolution of money itself.
So before we jump into the digital age, let's rewind the clock a bit, way back.
Yep.
Because before plastic, there was clay.
You're not kidding. Credit systems are ancient. Think Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago.
Wow.
They used clay tablets for trade, essentially IOUs baked in the sun.
Hard to imagine swiping a clay tablet at the checkout, right?
Right.
But how did we go from clay to plastic?
Well, the 20th century saw things really take off.
Yeah.
The first recognizable credit card.
Okay.
The Diners Club card arrived in 1949.
Oh, wow.
It was marketed as a charge card accepted at select upscale restaurants, mostly for businessmen who, let's be honest, probably just forgot their wallets.
So the expense account culture was alive and well even back then.
Exactly.
And then came Bank of America's big move with the BankAmericard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In 1958, they launched the BankAmericard program right there in Fresno, California.
Okay.
And that's where our story takes a turn for the chaotic.
Okay, I got to hear about this BankAmericard chaos.
Yeah.
What exactly went down in Fresno?
Picture this. Bank of America, convinced they had struck gold, decided to blanket Fresno with 65,000 pre-approved credit cards. Mail them out to practically everyone. Instant chaos. Fraud was rampant.
Wow.
I can only imagine the newspaper headlines.
What a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It sounds like they drastically overestimated the readiness of both the public and their own systems.
Absolutely. The technology and infrastructure simply couldn't support their ambitions. They tried expanding beyond California, but relying on snail mail to send paper invoices across the country for every transaction proved an epic fail.
Yeah.
Logistical nightmare doesn't even begin to describe it.
So at this point, the idea of a national, let alone global, credit card network seemed doomed.
It might have been, if not for a man named Dee Hock. He enters the picture at this critical juncture, working for the National Bank of Commerce at the time.
Okay.
And he sees both the immense potential and the enormous problems with the current system.
Okay.
This is where our story gets really interesting.
Dee Hock, he's been mentioned a few times already. From what I've gathered, he was more than just a suit.
Right.
He had some pretty radical ideas.
He was a true visionary.
Yeah.
But he also had this pragmatic streak.
Yeah.
He knew that the key was getting all these fiercely competitive banks to cooperate, to work toward a common goal. And that meant persuading Bank of America to let go of their BankAmericard, which they saw as their golden goose.
That couldn't have been an easy conversation.
Right.
Did he strong-arm them, appeal to their better nature? What was his strategy?
He understood human nature.
Yeah.
And he was a master negotiator. But perhaps, most importantly, he had this philosophy he called chaotic, a delicate balance of chaos and order.
Okay.
It wasn't just a theoretical idea. He applied it directly to his vision for this new payment network.
Okay. Chaotic. That's a new one. Break it down for me.
Yeah.
How does chaos and order work together, especially in the world of finance? And how did he convince these banking rivals that this was the way to go?
Well, Hock believed that traditional top-down hierarchies stifled innovation and couldn't adapt to rapid change. He wanted a system that was decentralized, owned, and governed by the banks themselves. His idea was, in essence, to create a network where every bank, even competitors, had a stake in its success. He laid down the ground rules. Everyone participates fully, no one entity holds majority power, and everyone is laser-focused on the same goal, growing the network together.
That's a pretty radical departure from the traditional corporate structure. It sounds almost anti-capitalist in a way.
It was certainly unorthodox, but Hock was a master at framing his vision. He argued that this collaboration, this controlled chaos, would ultimately benefit everyone, the banks, the merchants, and most importantly, the consumers. He believed that by distributing control and encouraging competition within the network, the system would be more adaptable, more resilient, and more innovative.
It's a fascinating concept, but I'm guessing not everyone was immediately on board with this whole chaotic approach.
Oh, there was definitely pushback.
Yeah.
But Hock was remarkably persuasive. He managed to convince the banks that this radical new structure was the only way to create a truly global payment system that could keep up with the rapid pace of technological change.
So he had the banks on board,
Yeah.
but I'm imagining there was another hurdle.
Right.
The government, this whole collaboration between competitors thing.
Yeah.
Sounds like it could raise some antitrust red flags.
You hit the nail on the head. Hock had to convince not only the banks, but also the Department of Justice, that this wasn't some illegal scheme to fix prices or stifle competition. He had to make the case that this collaboration was actually good for the market, good for consumers.
That must have been a tough sell.
Right.
How did he pull it off?
He argued that this network structure would lead to greater efficiency, lower costs, and wider acceptance of cards, ultimately benefiting consumers and driving economic growth. And incredibly, he convinced them. The DOJ gave its blessing, paving the way for the birth of, well, not quite Visa yet.
Yeah.
It still had that clunky BankAmericard name to contend with.
Yeah, BankAmericard doesn't exactly scream global financial powerhouse.
Right.
So how did they land on Visa?
They knew they needed a name that was short, memorable, and crucially, universally recognizable. They held a contest, and the winning entry was Visa. It's a word that's easy to pronounce in almost any language, and it instantly conveys a sense of movement, of access, of possibility.
It's brilliant in its simplicity, just one word, but it completely captures the essence of what they were trying to create. This name change must have been a major turning point for the company.
Absolutely. The rebranding to Visa signaled a new era. It sparked a frenzy of activity as banks clamored to join the network and sign up customers, fueling the company's explosive growth. But there were still some major technological hurdles to overcome. Remember that whole paper invoice fiasco?
Yeah, sending paper bills across the country was obviously not a sustainable solution. So how did they finally solve that problem? Enter the digital age.
Well, Visa was starting to make a name for itself, but they were still relying on this archaic, inefficient system for processing payments. They knew they had to innovate and fast. And that's where our deep dive into Visa's tech evolution begins. So you've got this rapidly growing network.
Yeah.
The actual mechanics of it, still stuck in the Stone Age.
Wow.
Every transaction relied on these paper trails, these physical records.
Okay.
It was slow, prone to errors, and incredibly expensive. Imagine the mountains of paper.
Not exactly the picture of efficiency we associate with Visa today.
Right.
So what was the first step toward a more streamlined system? Did they try to improve the paper system, or did they go straight for a digital solution?
They realized pretty quickly that Band-Aids weren't going to work.
Okay.
They needed a fundamental shift, a technological revolution.
Wow.
And that meant building their own infrastructure from the ground up.
Hold on. Visa building their own infrastructure, like their own phone lines, their own computers. That's a huge undertaking, especially back then.
It was a bold and some might say crazy move.
Yeah.
But they knew it was the only way to create a truly global, real-time payment network.
Okay.
They couldn't rely on existing telecom companies or data processing systems.
Right.
They needed something purpose-built for their needs.
Okay, color me impressed.
Yeah.
But this was the 1970s, right? We're talking pre-internet, pre-personal computer.
Right.
Where do you even begin to build a system like that?
It all started with the authorization process. Remember how before merchants had to call in to get approval for every single transaction?
Right.
It could take minutes,
Wow.
sometimes even longer.
Yeah.
Not exactly ideal for busy stores or impatient customers.
Yeah, I can only imagine the frustration on both sides and
Yeah.
trying to scale that globally. Forget it.
Exactly.
So what was their solution?
They decided to build an electronic authorization system.
Okay.
They called it BASE,
Huh.
the BankAmericard Authorization System. Experimental,
Base.
top secret project. Very hush-hush at the time.
Base has a kind of clandestine spy thriller vibe to it.
Uh-huh.
I'm picturing smoke-filled rooms,
Yeah.
computer banks with blinking lights,
Oh.
and lots of tension. Am I close?
You're not far off.
Okay.
There was definitely a sense of urgency, a feeling that they were racing against the clock to build this groundbreaking system.
Right.
Initially, Bank of America tried to partner with American Express,
Okay.
aiming for a joint authorization system.
Okay.
But Dee Hock wasn't having any of it.
Oh.
He was adamant that Visa had to control its own technology destiny.
So even while trying to build this network based on collaboration, Hawk still recognized the strategic importance of maintaining Visa's technological independence.
Exactly.
Smart move.
Partnering with a competitor like American Express would have given them too much influence, potentially stifling Visa's ability to innovate and adapt.
Right.
Hawk understood that technology was the key to their future success.
Mm-hmm.
He was willing to ruffle some feathers to make sure Visa stayed in control.
So they had this grand vision, this ambitious plan to build Base.
Mm-hmm.
But who actually built it? Did they have a team of tech wizards locked away in a secret lab somewhere?
They knew they needed the best of the best.
Yeah.
And they found their lead engineer in a man named Aram Tutulian. He's a brilliant mind, working for a tech company called TRW at the time.
Okay.
Dee Hock personally recruited him,
Wow.
offered him a challenge that most would have considered impossible.
Let me guess. Build a nationwide electronic authorization system in like a week.
Not quite a week, but close.
Okay.
Hock gave Tutulian a deadline of 9 months.
9 months. That's insane.
It was a huge undertaking.
Even by today's standards, that's an incredibly tight deadline for such a complex project. This was before the internet, before agile development, before all the tools and technologies we take for granted today. How did they even begin to tackle this?
It was a monumental undertaking.
Yeah.
It required building a dedicated telecommunications network,
Okay.
installing computer systems in all the member banks,
Wow.
developing custom software,
Right.
and training thousands of employees on how to use the new system.
Wow.
It's hard to overstate the scale and complexity of what they achieved in such a short time frame.
It's mind-boggling. It's like they were building the internet before the internet even existed.
Right.
I mean, they were basically laying the foundation for the entire digital payments infrastructure we rely on today. But they pulled it off.
Against all odds, they delivered.
Wow.
Within 9 months, Base was up and running.
Wow, that's amazing.
Transactions that once took minutes were now approved in seconds.
That's
It
incredible.
was a game changer for both merchants and consumers.
This Base system, it sounds like the unsung hero of Visa's success story.
It was.
It laid the foundation for everything that came after.
It did.
But I'm guessing they didn't stop there, right?
No.
The paper problem wasn't entirely solved.
Right.
What about actually moving the money between banks?
That was the next challenge.
Okay.
Settlement. The process of actually transferring funds between banks
Right.
was still relying on those paper-based systems.
Oh, wow.
It was a major bottleneck, slow, and costly.
Okay.
Visa needed a solution that could keep up with the speed and volume of transactions flowing through their new electronic authorization system.
Enter Base 2.
You got it.
Okay.
Building on the success of Base,
Uh-huh.
they developed Base 2, an electronic clearing and settlement system.
Wow.
It was a revolutionary system that replaced those mountains of paper invoices with digital records.
Oh.
Merchants could submit their sales electronically,
Right.
and Visa's systems would automatically route the payments to the correct banks.
So no more lost invoices, no more delays caused by snail mail. I can see how this would have been a huge relief for everyone involved, especially the banks who were footing the bill for all that postage.
It was a win-win.
Yeah.
The banks saved a fortune on processing costs.
Uh-huh.
Merchants got paid faster,
Right?
and the entire system became infinitely more efficient and scalable.
Wow.
It was a critical step toward the seamless digital payments experience we have today.
So we've got instant authorizations, we've got electronic settlement.
Yeah.
What was the final piece of the puzzle that brought us to the familiar world of swiping and tapping that we know today?
The cards themselves needed an upgrade.
Okay.
Up to this point, Visa cards were basically just fancy versions of those old charge plates,
Right.
embossed numbers on a piece of plastic.
Yeah.
Merchants still had to manually imprint those numbers onto carbon copy slips for every transaction.
It's hard to believe we ever put up with that.
I know.
So when did the magical swipe come into our lives?
The late 1970s saw the arrival of the magnetic stripe.
Okay.
This seemingly simple innovation transformed the way we use credit cards.
Yeah.
Suddenly, cards could be swiped through terminals, instantly transmitting the cardholder's information.
Oh, the satisfying swoosh of a successful swipe. But it was more than just satisfying, right? This connected directly to the base system.
Precisely.
Okay.
Those new card terminals could be connected directly to Visa's network,
Right.
enabling real-time authorization and settlement.
Okay.
It was a huge leap forward in speed, security, and convenience.
Hmm.
The digital age of payments had truly arrived.
Amazing how this tiny strip of magnetic tape revolutionized everything.
I know.
But even with all this incredible technology, wasn't there still a stigma attached to credit cards? Were they seen as something only for, well, people who couldn't manage their money?
That's right. Credit cards had a bit of an image problem.
Yeah.
They were seen as risky,
Yeah.
associated with debt and overspending. Visa knew they had to change that perception if they wanted to achieve mainstream adoption.
Yeah.
And so they launched a series of brilliant marketing campaigns
Okay.
designed to reposition credit cards as a symbol of status, convenience, and financial savvy.
I'm picturing those classic Visa, it's everywhere you want to be ads. Very aspirational, very jet-setting. Were they going for that kind of vibe?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They wanted to make using a Visa card feel like you were part of an exclusive club,
Yeah.
that you were living a life of adventure and sophistication.
Right.
And they didn't just rely on slick TV commercials.
Yeah.
They went big, sponsoring major events like the Olympic Games.
The Olympics.
Right.
That's a genius move.
It was.
It's global, it's associated with excellence, and it reaches a massive audience.
Exactly.
Hey,
Starting in 1986, Visa became a global sponsor of the Olympics.
wow.
Their logo was everywhere, on banners, uniforms, scoreboards.
Wow.
It was a brilliant way to associate their brand with the spirit of competition, achievement, and global unity.
So in a couple of decades, they went from a messy, localized program to this global symbol of financial power, convenience, and even aspiration.
Right.
That's a remarkable transformation.
It is.
But let's be honest, a big part of their success has to do with those interchange fees, right?
Yeah.
That tiny percentage they collect on every transaction.
Those fees are the lifeblood of Visa's business model.
Right.
They're what allow them to generate those incredible profit margins.
Right.
But they've also been a source of controversy, with merchants pushing back against what they see as exorbitant fees.
Yeah.
And now, with the rise of new payment technologies,
Right.
those fees are facing a whole new level of scrutiny.
Which brings us to the big question. Can Visa maintain its dominance in this rapidly evolving landscape?
That's the big question.
What are the challenges and opportunities they face going forward?
Okay, so we've seen Visa rise from the ashes of that BankAmericard chaos, build a global network, and become this seemingly unstoppable financial force.
Yeah, but the world of payments never stands still. What's next?
Can this giant keep adapting, or are there storm clouds gathering on the horizon?
The payments landscape is a dynamic one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
For Visa, that means a whole new set of challenges
Uh-huh.
and opportunities.
Right.
It's not just about processing transactions anymore.
Okay.
It's about anticipating the future, how people want to move money.
So let's talk threats. What's keeping the folks at Visa up at night these days? What could disrupt this seemingly impenetrable empire?
One word: disruption.
Okay.
New technologies, shifting consumer behaviors. They're all putting pressure on Visa's traditional business model. Think about it.
Okay.
How often do you pull out a physical credit card to pay for something?
Honestly, not that often. My phone's pretty much my wallet these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're not alone.
Okay.
Mobile payments are exploding. Apple Pay, Google Pay, all those digital wallets, they're quickly becoming the go-to payment method for many people. Okay, so it's more convenient, but how does that threaten Visa? They're still processing those transactions, right?
They are, but their role is becoming less visible.
Okay.
Instead of swiping your Visa card, you're tapping your phone.
Right.
The payment might still flow through Visa's network,
Uh-huh.
but the brand is taking a backseat.
So they're getting their cut, but maybe losing that direct connection with the consumer, that brand loyalty.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that opens the door for new players to enter the game.
Right.
Players who control the entire ecosystem, not just the payment processing piece.
You're talking about companies like Apple, right? They've already got millions of people using Apple Pay. Their devices are everywhere. Could they realistically cut out the middleman and create their own payment network?
It's a possibility that can't be ignored. Apple has disrupted industries before. Think about music, phones, even watches. They've got the brand power, the technology, and the user base. If they decide to go all in on payments, it could be a major shakeup.
But why would merchants go for it? They're already paying fees to Visa and MasterCard. Wouldn't adding another payment system just complicate things?
That's the big question. Apple would have to offer them a pretty compelling reason to switch.
Yeah.
Lower fees, maybe? More control over customer data, perhaps? Or some combination of benefits that makes it too good to pass up?
So what's Visa doing about all of this? Are they just sitting back and watching as the world shifts around them?
Not at all. They're investing heavily in new technologies, trying to stay ahead of the curve. Take tokenization, for example. Remember how we talked about Apple Pay using tokens to represent your card information, making it more secure?
Yeah, those virtual stand-ins for your actual card number.
Right. And Visa's embracing that technology.
Okay.
They're offering tokenization services to banks and merchants, helping them secure transactions and reduce fraud. It's a way of turning a potential threat into a competitive advantage.
So if you can't beat them, join them.
Exactly.
Smart move. What else are they doing to innovate?
They're also exploring real-time payments, where money moves instantly between accounts. Think about how much faster and more efficient that could be than waiting for traditional bank transfers to clear.
That sounds amazing. No more waiting days for a check to clear or a transfer to go through, but how does that fit into Visa's model?
It's a recognition that the way we move money is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Consumers want faster, more seamless experiences.
Right.
And Visa wants to be the company that powers those experiences, even if it means disrupting their own existing systems.
It sounds like they're taking this challenge seriously, but with all these new technologies emerging, is there anything that could completely upend the payments industry as we know it, the ultimate disruptor?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one thing, it would be the emergence of a truly global, real-time payment system.
Mm.
Imagine a world where money moves instantly across borders with minimal fees and no delays.
Okay, that sounds pretty utopian. Is that even realistic?
It's more within reach than you might think. Several countries already have real-time payment systems in place, and there are efforts underway to link those systems together, creating a network that spans the globe.
So if that were to happen, what would it mean for Visa? Game over.
It's not an exaggeration to say it could render their current model obsolete.
Wow.
If you can send money directly to anyone in the world instantly and cheaply, why would you need a credit card network?
Okay, that's a pretty sobering thought. But even if this global system emerges, it's probably maybe even decades away, right?
True, but it highlights the importance of thinking long-term, of
Yeah.
anticipating change and adapting to new realities.
Right.
Visa can't afford to be complacent. They have to constantly innovate, explore new technologies, and maybe even be willing to disrupt themselves before someone else does.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? Why should they care about the future of Visa?
Because it affects all of us. Every time you swipe a card, tap your phone, or shop online, you're participating in this complex ecosystem that Visa helped to create. Understanding how it works, the challenges it faces, and the innovations that are shaping its future gives you a glimpse into the evolution of money itself.
And it reminds us that even the most dominant players aren't immune to disruption. The future of payments is being written right now, and it's up to all of us as consumers, as innovators, to shape that future.
So the next time you make a purchase, take a moment to think about the journey your money is taking, the technology that makes it possible, and the forces that are shaping the future of finance. Maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to come up with the next big idea that changes everything.
As Dee Hock said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So go out there and invent something amazing.
Until next time, keep diving.